Ever wonder what kept the nation's leaders fueled as they made the big decisions? Well, the road to history is paved with some surprising menu choices. Here's a behind-the-scenes peek into the White House kitchen where we reveal each president's favorite foods. From comforting foods to culinary head-scratchers, these presidential plates are every bit as individual as those who consumed them. So, grab your fork, bring an appetite, and let's dig into what American leaders have been dishing up through the centuries. 1. George Washington. Hoe cakes with honey. Let's start at the very beginning with George Washington. The man was not only a founding father, he was also a fan of hoe cakes, which are small cornmeal pancakes slathered in honey. These were not something to be wolfed down on the run. Rather, they were almost as much of a daily ritual for Washington as getting dressed. Family members and visitors alike witnessed that he couldn't begin the day without a big mound of hoe cakes, all drizzled with honey. 2. John Adams. Hard cider. John Adams, the second president of the United States, had a morning routine that was as distinctive as his role in shaping the nation. Most people today would probably grab a hot cup of coffee to start off their morning. But not John Adams. He preferred a far more different choice. Hard cider for his morning pick-me-up. Drinking water was sometimes of questionable quality in colonial America, so it was not uncommon for many to seek alternatives that were safer, such as hard cider. 3. Thomas Jefferson, macaroni and cheese. Thomas Jefferson was a president with a very refined, European-inspired palate. His love for macaroni and cheese is legendary. After a trip to Italy, he brought back not just the recipe, but even a pasta-making machine, determined to recreate the dish in America. Jefferson was known as the father of the Declaration of Independence, but he was also called the original Mac Daddy. 4. James Madison, Virginia ham. James Madison, who was known as the father of the Constitution, liked something as substantial and American as his principles, Virginia ham. It is reported that Virginia ham was served to visitors who came to the White House during the period of Madison's service. The perfectly cooked Virginia ham that spread through the halls of the White House added to the warmth that Madison wanted to experience within the walls of the White House. 5. James Monroe, spoon bread. James Monroe had a weakness for spoon bread, that classic Southern comfort food that's cornbread crossed with a souffle. It's fluffy and creamy, lightly sweetened, the sort of dish you might wish to scoop right into your mouth, and Monroe clearly agreed. 6. John Quincy Adams, fruit. John Quincy Adams had a fruitful obsession. He was absolutely hooked on fresh fruit. While many other presidents were famous for hefty meals, Adams kept it light and fresh with the love of fruits, especially apricots, peaches, and plums. He wanted to make this more accessible, so during his presidency, he planted a variety of fruit trees on the White House grounds. 7. Andrew Jackson, leather breeches. Andrew Jackson, the 7th president of the United States, had an interesting culinary tradition consistent with his Southern background. Leather breeches, an old-fashioned food made from dried green beans. Being a Southern man from birth, this meal suits Jackson's description as being old hickory, a man tough as nails. In fact, the leather breeches fit perfectly into that rugged image. 8. Martin Van Buren, oysters. Martin Van Buren had a taste for the finer things, and nothing says sophistication like a plate of oysters. He was known to enjoy these slippery delicacies, often indulging in them at lavish dinners. Perhaps it was the oyster's elegance that appealed to him, or maybe the fact that they were a popular delicacy of the time. Either way, he wasn't shy about savoring these seafood delights. 9. William Henry Harrison, burgoo. William Henry Harrison's favorite food was burgoo, the thick, flavorful stew that consisted of a mix of meats such as chicken, beef, and pork is the kind of dish that can feed a crowd and keep everyone satisfied, something that would appeal to the man who valued both his people and his food. 10. John Tyler, chess pie. For those who have a sweet tooth, look no further than chess pie, a Southern classic that John Tyler loved to indulge in. Chess pie is known for its rich, custard-like filling and buttery crust. It was a dessert that packed a punch of sweetness. No wonder then that Tyler, being a Virginian to the core, would settle on this pie as his go-to snack, a perfect reflection of the warmth and hospitality of the South. 11. James K. Polk, cornbread. James K. Polk, the 11th president, had a very humble yet fulfilling favorite dish, cornbread. This simple, rustic bread was a staple in all Southern kitchens, and President Polk loved it as much as anyone. Be it served with beans or paired as a side to some kind of savory stew, it was a comfort food to which Polk clung throughout his presidency. 12. Zachary Taylor, Callus Touchot's delight. Meet Zachary Taylor's sweet tooth. He was quite the fan of callus touchot, which is hot rice cakes in Creole. These delicious rice cakes are fried to a golden crisp and often enjoyed drizzled with molasses or syrup, which gives them that scrumptious kick. Think of them as the southern cousin of beignets, which have really taken the spotlight lately. While beignets are all the rage these days, callus touchots were the life of the party before World War II. 13. Millard Fillmore. Soup. Millard Fillmore, who was the 13th President of the United States, loved soup. His favorites were always rich, breathy ones with plenty of assorted vegetables. Some of his favorite classic choices included chicken and beef soups that often consisted of healthy root vegetables such as carrots, potatoes, and celery. Though perhaps not the most adventurous palate, Fillmore's choice reflects his practical and down-to-earth personality. 14. Franklin Pierce. Fried clams. Franklin Pierce, the 14th President of the United States, had a surprising favorite food, fried clams. It is likely that his fondness for this food was because of his affinity with his New England roots in New Hampshire, where seafood is a staple. It may not have been the most sophisticated dish served in the White House, but it certainly reflected Pierce's down-to-earth taste. 15. James Buchanan. Cabbage. James Buchanan was the only bachelor president. He was quite a lover of cabbage. He was always known for his frugal tastes, and cabbage was found on his plate most of the time. Sometimes he liked it simply boiled, and other times in combination with potatoes. 16. Abraham Lincoln. Apples. Our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, was a man of simple taste and straightforward nature. His diet was not very elaborate, and when he ate, he had something like an apple with a glass of milk. Lincoln's diet was symbolic of his practical personality. Although the man wasn't a foodie, he knew all too well how to appreciate the power of a swift, energizing snack when things got tough. 17. Andrew Johnson. Hoppin' John. Hoppin' John is a dish from rice, pork, and black-eyed peas that is mostly popular in the South. Also, one of Andrew Johnson's favorites. It is said that he used to eat his Hoppin' John for breakfast, lunch, and even dinner. According to history, it is said that good luck came with the serving of the dish. Maybe that's why Johnson stuck with it during some of the most turbulent times in American history. 18. Ulysses S. Grant. Rice pudding. From war hero to president, Ulysses S. Grant was known to have a sweet tooth, especially for rice pudding. This classic dessert, creamy and comforting, was apparently Grant's favorite. Even after his military days were over, he remained a fan of simple comforts, and rice pudding was a treat he could rely on. While his image may have been tough and tumble, his dessert choice shows a softer side. 19. Rutherford B. Hayes. Cornmeal pancakes. Most presidents would have opted for something fancy, but Hayes stuck to what was simple and hearty, enjoying golden, fluffy cornmeal pancakes with a touch of rustic charm. He loved them so much that it's said they were a staple of his breakfast. Imagine the 19th century, devouring a stack of these delicious, slightly sweet pancakes, fueling up for a day in the Oval Office. 20. James A. Garfield. Squirrel stew. James A. Garfield had a rather unusual food for his favorite dish, squirrel stew. Yes, you heard that right, squirrel stew. The 20th President of the United States liked to indulge in this particular dish, which is not something most of us wouldn't expect on any presidential menu. 21. Chester Arthur. Mutton chops. Chester Arthur was not only remembered by his fashionable mutton chops, but also for a love for the meal itself. His favorite dish consisted of a big serving of mutton chops with ale as a refreshing accompaniment. It's a fun coincidence that his signature facial hair shared the same name as his favorite feast. Whether he had planned it or it simply happened to be the case, no one knows. 22. Grover Cleveland. Corned beef and cabbage. Grover Cleveland is the only president to have served 2 non-consecutive terms. This president had a hearty appetite for rich, filling foods, so it is little wonder that one of his favorites was corned beef with cabbage, which became an Irish-American staple served in the White House several times during Cleveland's term. 23. Benjamin Harrison. Corn. Benjamin Harrison had a genuine soft spot for corn, which is a staple of his Midwestern roots and a fitting favorite for this Indiana-born president. To Harrison, corn was not merely a side dish, it was a comfort food that would bring him a taste of home and tradition with each bite. As corn muffins, stewed corn, or even corn fritters, this plain grain captured his heart. 24. William McKinley. Red flannel hash. William McKinley simply loved red flannel hash, a dish as colorful as it sounds. Corned beef, potatoes, and beets are combined in this New England classic to create the distinct red color that gives it its flannel name. Imagine the president enjoying a plate of this rustic, vibrant hash after a long day. The warmth and bold flavors bringing a little New England flavor to the White House table. 25. Teddy Roosevelt, steak and eggs. Teddy Roosevelt was one tough, rugged character, and his diet reflected that. Roosevelt was all about protein, starting his day with a hearty steak and eggs breakfast. As a known hunter and outdoorsman, Roosevelt needed his energy, and nothing said, "Get ready for the day," quite like a slab of steak on his plate. Roosevelt's cowboy-style breakfast became a White House staple, and he maintained his love for red meat even during his global travels. 26. William Howard, Taft, steak with potatoes and gravy. Our 27th president, William Howard Taft, was a foodie, and he dined on the ultimate classic comfort food, steak with potatoes and gravy. Well known for his appetite, Taft's love for food often became the subject of media commentary and political cartoons. The man enjoyed his hearty meal, and this favorite was a true meat and potatoes dish. Taft may be recalled as a large man because of his size, but also as a man with a big personality and an even bigger appetite. 27. Woodrow Wilson, Virginia country ham. Woodrow Wilson was reported to be particularly fond of Virginia country ham, a dignified favorite of the last U.S. president from Virginia. Virginia country ham is a southern delicacy, known for its salty, deep flavor and smoky aroma. Wilson couldn't get enough of it. Even when his health required him to limit his diet, his doctor allowed him the luxury of this one favorite. 28. Warren G. Harding, chicken pot pie. Chicken pot pie was one of the favorite dishes that Warren G. Harding relished. He often enjoyed this warm, savory meal while serving as president. Served often with a flaky crust, chicken, potatoes, and vegetables, chicken pot pie offered a little home-style comfort in the White House dining room. 29. Calvin Coolidge, Vermont apples and apple pie. A native Vermonter, Calvin Coolidge had a weakness for Vermont apples and apple pie. Nicknamed Silent Cal because of his introverted nature, he appreciated simple things, and an apple pie symbolized his New England roots. Fresh apples were always in abundance and often taken right from the orchard. A slice of classic apple pie was a regular feature in the Coolidge household. 30. Herbert Hoover, sweet potatoes with marshmallows. Herbert Hoover enjoyed sweet potatoes with marshmallows, a side dish that we have grown to associate with Thanksgiving. Hoover would indulge in a sweet potato topped with toasted marshmallows. Indeed, this Southern-inspired dish reflected his love for unique and flavorful combinations. During the Great Depression, the presidency of Herbert Hoover faced a very challenging time, but he always had a sweet spot for this sugary comfort food. 31. Franklin D. Roosevelt, grilled cheese and tomato soup. To say that America was going through some of its toughest moments, the Great Depression and World War II, would be a gross understatement. At that time, President Franklin D. Roosevelt found comfort in a meal that remains one of the most loved to this day, grilled cheese with tomato soup. This budget-friendly combination was warm, familiar, and simple to prepare, offering a sense of ease and nostalgia amid the incredible demands of his presidency. 32. Harry Truman, fried chicken. Harry Truman, a proud Missourian, was direct in all things, whether politics or food. When it came to his favorite meal, he gravitated toward the comfort of classic, home-cooked fare, fried chicken. He enjoyed this meal with his family, a tradition that he carried to the White House. As he sat in the nation's highest office, Truman's down-to-earth tastes and love for family-style meals made him relatable to many Americans. 33. Dwight D. Eisenhower, million-dollar fudge. Get ready for a sweet story about our 34th president, Dwight D. Eisenhower. His taste buds were tickled by a delightful treat crafted by his wife, Mamie. He affectionately named this delicious dessert million-dollar fudge, probably because he felt it was worth its weight in gold. But that's not all. According to Dwight D. Eisenhower Presidential Library, he also had a soft spot for Mamie's apple pie and sugar cookies, proving that this president had quite the sweet tooth. 34. John F. Kennedy, New England, clam chowder. John F. Kennedy proudly embraced his New England roots, and few dishes capture that regional spirit quite like New England clam chowder. To JFK, such rich, soulful soup wasn't just a matter of taste. It represented a warm connection to his Bostonian patrimony, a taste of home regardless of the distance his presidency would take him from there. Nothing says Boston boy quite like a bowl of clam chowder in the White House. 35. Lyndon B. Johnson, Texas BBQ. A proud Texan, Lyndon B. Johnson brought big tastes of Texas with him to Washington, D.C. through his love of BBQ, which characterized his hearty appetite for Texas-style barbecue, savoring the smoky, tender flavors of brisket, ribs, and sausage cooked the way only a Texan would truly appreciate. In fact, he turned his favorite dish into a tool for diplomacy, as he was known to hold barbecue diplomacy at his ranch in Texas. 36. Richard Nixon, cottage cheese with ketchup. One thing that might shock you about Richard Nixon is his favorite food combination: cottage cheese topped with a big dollop of ketchup. Yes, you heard that right. Nixon reportedly enjoyed this quirky pairing regularly, making it a go-to snack that seemed to satisfy his unique palate. Through time, cottage cheese with ketchup became a curious footnote in White House culinary history, a taste combination that, like or loathe it, was unmistakably Nixon's. 37. Gerald Ford, pot roast. At core, Gerald Ford was a Midwesterner and always had a weakness for good old pot roast with potatoes and carrots. This classic dish, loved by Ford, spoke volumes about his down-to-earth nature and approach to politics. Pot roast was comforting and familiar, reminding him of home-cooked meals with his family. It's no surprise that this no-frills president loved a no-frills meal. 38. Jimmy Carter, grits. From Georgia, Jimmy Carter was all about Southern comfort food, and grits topped his list. Grits, which are a staple in the South, are made from boiled cornmeal and often served with butter, cheese, or salt. For Carter, this simple dish was a reminder of his roots, and he often enjoyed it with his family in the White House. His love for grits was so well known that it became part of his public image. 39. Ronald Reagan, jelly beans. Ronald Reagan had a sweet tooth, literally. What was meant to be a way to quit smoking turned into an all-out addiction to jelly beans, which inevitably found their way into the Oval Office. Stories even exist about Reagan offering these to guests as they sat down in meetings. His favorite flavor was licorice. His sweet tooth became so well known that jelly beans practically became the unofficial candy of his presidency and added a little burst of color and fun to the time he spent in the White House. 40. George H.W. Bush, pork rinds. George H.W. Bush had a weakness for pork rinds, crunchy, salty snacks he'd frequently snack on with a splash of hot sauce. It was not a whim. The pork rind love was documented and part of his down-to-earth everyman image. While he occupied the highest office in the country, his love for this humble, salty treat bonded him to the average American in a way that few foods could. At one point, pork rinds gained such importance that the sale reportedly picked up all over the country, with Bush unintentionally turning pork rinds into a presidential favorite. 41. Bill Clinton, cheeseburgers. Bill Clinton's love for fast food, especially cheeseburgers. His taste for old-fashioned American cuisine became so iconic during his presidency that this was reported on by the press and public. Clinton loved burgers and was known for frequently making impromptu visits to McDonald's. Reporters and citizens were elated over this. Among Clinton's most memorable incidents as president was when, shortly after being elected, he was photographed in McDonald's eating a Big Mac with fries. It was a refreshing change in an era when many politicians were often portrayed as stiff and overly formal. 42. George W. Bush, Tex-Mex. George W. Bush's love for Tex-Mex is legendary, and it's no surprise considering his Texas roots. Among his favorites are guacamole and tortilla chips, chili, Planters trail mix, broccoli, and spinach. For George W. Bush, the best thing to bring a smile to his fave is probably a plate of nachos. 43. Barack Obama, spicy chili. Obama has been known for his love of bold flavors and diversified cuisines, and it can be said that his preference for chili reflects both his personal taste and his cultural heritage. Even his chili recipe, which he has shared publicly from time to time, has a blend of spices added for a delightful kick, which shows his desire to experiment in the kitchen. Obama's chili is an interesting recipe with different combinations of ingredients such as black beans, kidney beans, and a mix of peppers added to give the food those layers of flavor. So whether he was stirring up a pot of his famous spicy chili in the White House kitchen or enjoying a bowl at a local diner, Barack Obama's love for this dish added a dash of bold flavor to his presidency. 44. Donald Trump, fast food. Donald Trump's love of fast food was no secret. It was famously reported that Trump had a special love for Big Macs. The two all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun quickly became the order of choice. He would often keep a supply of these burgers in reserve. His love for fast food was not just about flavor but also convenience. Trump's schedule did not allow time to sit down and enjoy proper meals, so he enjoyed the ease and quick service of the meal. 45. Joe Biden, ice cream. And finally, Joe Biden is famous for his love of ice cream. Whether it's a classic chocolate chip or a simple scoop of vanilla, Biden is frequently spotted enjoying an ice cream cone, and this sweet indulgence has endeared him to many Americans. He has also often described himself as an ice cream enthusiast, famously saying, "I don't drink, I don't smoke, but I eat a lot of ice cream." Thanks for joining us on this tasty journey through presidential palates. From steak and potatoes to jelly beans and chili, each president added a unique flavor to the White House. Which of these meals would you want to try? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Retro America so you don't miss the next ones.